Have you ever lived a transition? Maybe it's a change of careers, you moved to a different city, maybe you lost a loved one. I grew up as an entrepreneur, and oddly enough, that kind of alienated me from a lot of my friends, my family, and certainly my father. You have to think this way. I think differently as an entrepreneur, and it's not a hobby. It's a way of life. It's a way that I feel inside. And I guess I think differently about life and taking risks. I'm not afraid as much of taking risks as some people might be. And I guess maybe especially with my father, he didn't want to see me struggle and suffer, at least what he thought was me suffering. But looking forward, of all the ideals that I had as far as being an entrepreneur, I strived. I finally looked ahead at what I wanted, and I worked towards it. And I find myself in life, as a young adult, flying. I'm engaged to a wonderful woman. I'm reconnecting with my father, because I guess it's a father's prerogative not to see his kids suffer or struggle. And we've got a beautiful home. She's got a great career. And my businesses are doing fantastic. I'm flying high. Then, bam! I lose my father to diabetic complications. And I remember finding myself in the hospital holding his still warm, lifeless hand. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye because he passed on the way to the hospital when I got the call that something wasn't doing all right. How the hell was I going to make this transition now? This is the guy I looked up to for answers about life. Life coach, if you want to call him that, although that's not what he called himself. And yet, I have to go on. I have to now take whatever lessons he taught me and bring them forward and apply them to my life. Hey, look, I'm getting married soon, so let's look forward. Let's look ahead. We planned this amazing wedding, beautiful honeymoon, first time to the Bahamas for both of us. Things are good. I'm getting past this. I've gone through the first birthday without him, the first Christmas without him, and all these firsts. But now we're married. We're on our honeymoon. Halfway through the honeymoon, Chantel detects a lump on her breast. Now, this is real. And I remember for the rest of the afternoon and part of that evening, I was holding her hand, trying in my best desperation and uncertainty to console her and figure out what we're going to do. And I suggested, listen, let's just shelve this for a minute. There's nothing we can do here in the Bahamas. Let's deal with this when we get home, and we did. We enjoyed the rest of our honeymoon, and we got home. We sought advice from doctors and specialists and tests and inconclusive tests. And several months later, I find myself again holding her hand in a hospital in Hawkesbury, recovering from a radical mastectomy. They removed a 1 kilo mass from her chest. How am I going to support her through this transition of hers, the chemo and the complications and the upcoming surgeries? And I could spend hours, if you allow me, of how terrible all that was, and yet we went through it. We looked ahead, what we wanted our life to be, surviving cancer, and we had great times. We traveled and we did some great things together for a good long time. But 8 years in, I find myself in the hospital, cradling her head and holding her hand again as I whisper, it's okay to let go. You promised me you'd work hard and you'd work at surviving. It's okay to let go. We're going to make it. It's okay. And she takes a long, slow breath. And she exhales her last breath while I'm cradling her head. How am I going to survive this transition? How am I going to make it without her and the dreams that we said we were going to follow? How am I going to achieve all these things that required her to be there? For 8 months, I remember myself crying myself to sleep almost every night, wondering how I'm going to make it through this hole in my chest. And all the firsts, first Christmas, first this, first everything. But I strived through it, and people, oddly enough, were asking me after the funeral, weeks and months later, how are you doing? How are you coping? And I remember answering one thing really distinctly. I feel like crap right now, but I'll get better. It'll get better. And you know what? After 8 months, it did look better, because I was thinking ahead of what I wanted. I'm left. I'm here. I've got to do something with this. And look at this. I decide out of my own volition now to have 2 more simultaneous transitions. I moved to this fair city, Mississauga, the center of the universe. Right? Okay. And now I transition in starting my own business in financial services. I'm a techie geek. You read the bio. Like, what am I doing? Doing these things. And yet 3 years later, I've been here 3 years. Life is really awesome as I'm thinking ahead of what I wanted. Met this wonderful lady sitting in the front row here. We are putting together one beautiful life, looking ahead at what we wanted. And now I ask myself, what was the common theme about all of this? How did I get through all these transitions? And I found out one thing after moving here. I applied this one principle of starting with the end in mind. I always started with the end in mind. And I visualized almost daily what I wanted that end to be. Who did I want to become? What did I want to achieve? And I visualized it to the point where I can actually feel it inside. I did, and I achieved. And I'm now on your stage sharing these stories with you, that it is possible to visualize and start with the end in mind. Now here's something really interesting. It's amazing where we learn things from. And I recently, I saw this in a comic strip. Imagine, if you will, with me. Charlie Brown and Snoopy are sitting on a dock together, and Charlie Brown turns to Snoopy in the ever man he is, and he says, Snoopy, you only live once. And Snoopy turns around and he says, wrong, Charlie. You only die once, but you live every day. You live every day. Make the most of every day. Thank you.